Hello everybody, and thank you for coming back to the channel. And on this chapter I'm going to be doing the fin and rudder. Hopefully that's the plan, using a propeller as a prop to point to things. So a little bit of the thoughts. Let's see if I can zoom you in ever so slightly. So a bit of the thoughts of what I want to do. This is actually designed for the rubber powered model. That's why there's a trim tab here, as you can see. But what I'm going to do two independent pieces with a full rudder to be hinged and movable. I don't think I'm going to have an issue with weight, because the engine is so heavy and the battery in the nose is so heavy. So what I'm thinking of doing is to beef up the whole structure. At the moment here the structure is probably like a 1.5 millimeter piece of balsa simply. I think I'm going to make it big, like maybe a 6 millimeter, something like that, and then sand it down similar as I did with the leading edges of the wing, so somehow to beef it up and give it a bit of a better shape. And I'm also thinking for fun practices or for fun purposes, as well as maybe practical purposes in terms of weight and strength, to maybe build up the whole fin and then actually plank it, make it a little bit more solid. These things do hit, especially if it flips over on a landing or something like that, so try to beef it up a little bit more like that, and also to practice a little bit of the planking, which is also fun. It's an idea, I might not do it. And then I have to figure out then how I'm going to put it onto the tail plane, the elevator. This is basically not focusing. Well, this is basically the stabilizer and elevator, so that's going to go in here, and then this on top. Let's see if we can put it. It's actually going to go in this way, but so you can see it. So that's going to be then for the fin itself. And then for the rudder, then I would do some hinges. I'll need to plank probably the bottom part, because that's where the control horn is going to go in, probably from the right side at least. And then the rest I can just tissue it over and just use tissue on it. Maybe also plank it as he, but probably tissue it. What I'll do in terms of the design, we have here this big piece, which is actually this one here. So that I'm going to need two of those. I'll start with one, do one of those, start to do the layout and build up the ribs. The ribs are here, I don't know if you can see them. These are the rib designs, so this is what I'll be then using. Here we have S1, S2, S3, S1, S2, S3, so that will be the ones that I'll be using. So another interesting part, a little bit of experiments as usual. And also notice here, sometimes I write when I start the conversions. We are now sometime in September, something like that. This will be published probably in October. I started to build this in February, so I'm 8 months at this. A bit of a long one. I thought it was going to be a fast model, but evidently not a flying fast model, but a fast build. But it isn't. Anyhow, fun continues. And here I am with an update on the fin. So I've already picked up all the pieces, or like cut out all the pieces. This is the key part, which is this shape S. This one is going to go here, and this one is going to be the leading edge. If you notice, because I'll show you, the leading edge is actually a little bit smaller or narrower than the main rib. I'm going to call it, it's a vertical rib. So if I want to have it centered, then I'm going to have to put some kind of separators. It will be 1 millimeter, I think, underneath the leading edge. And then I'll put this one in vertical, and then with this then I'll start to put in the pieces. So I probably also need to put in some separators there. For these other ribs, I think it's going to be okay. And then there's this other, the bottom rib, that is somehow there crooked or has to be bent. What I've also discovered studying the plan, I hadn't noticed up to now, is that here we have these words cane dowels, and here we have paper tubes. So I never understood actually what it was for, but I believe that what Tauno here is meaning is that probably putting a dowel here, a toothpick size, and that would actually then fit in here, so somehow making the fin removable or somehow fixing it in place. So I'll probably do that also, maybe with both, I'm not sure. At some point also I need to build up this other structure that's somewhere down there on the plan. But at the moment I think I'll just go with putting in the toothpicks in place, so that it has the capacity to then slide into the rear part of the fuselage, and probably keep it more stable, as I said before, in case it tips over, hits its tail or something, that it's a little bit stronger. So I'll go ahead with that, and once I have the structure then I'll show you, and then I might do the planking or might not. I'll see how I feel. And here is the structure of the fin. It's been set in there for a day or two actually, so the glue should be more than set. I'll take out the pins and show you the results. As you can see, in order to keep the parts aligned, I put in some shimming. Here's like 1mm bits of balsa, and here it's 1.5. This was kind of eyeballed, but let's see if it did work, and let's see if the general structure is kind of straight. It can still be fixed a little bit through the sanding and carving down, and let's see if it's not too glued. There it is. So there's the structure from the front. I need to then round off the leading edge, and this is then the back. So now the steps are going to be to sand this down, the top, sand down, carve or sand down the leading edge, that it somehow fits in there neatly. And then the question is, if I want to actually put in somehow plank it in, like make it solid, I might, because it's fun. And at the same time also, as I was mentioning, prepare maybe putting, I don't know if 2 holes or maybe 1 at least, to put in the kind of toothpicks that are going to go here. So a hole in here and fixing it up there, another hole in here and fixing it here, that it then able to kind of sit into actually here. This is the tail plane, so it would kind of come in and fit in there like that. That's a theory at least, so let's see what I have. So I've started to plank the tail fin. So I've put in a plank on one side, like sanded it down and then put in the planks. I was thinking what way to orientate the grain. I've decided to go in vertical on the top panels, and then on the bottom panels I'll put it in horizontal, thinking that maybe like that it'll be a little bit stronger somehow. So let's see, I'm not sure actually what would be the best way. I've also put in the toothpicks, and I've tried to set it in here, and it kind of went in well. Let's see if I don't break it now. And it actually sits in quite nicely and flush, and seems to be quite a strong connection. There you can see it. And then here there's still another construction to build here that then fits onto, let's see if I zoom out a little bit. This should then eventually somehow fit here. So I'd probably need to figure out how to do it then with the tail, but anyhow, this is what we have here. I'm not worried about weight. Actually, I'm more worried about lack of weight in the tail. So I'll do the tissue covering, but I'm going to leave space here eventually to put in some more weights, because I have the feeling that with the battery and everything in the nose of the plane, I'm going to need more weight. But anyhow, I'm going to do then the bottom side, then I'll start then on the rudder itself, and then figure out how I'm going to put this into the tail of the fuselage. And then with that, it's pretty much ready for tissue covering or planking. We'll see what we do. And here is the fully planked fin. Not maybe perfect, but anyhow I'll put tissue over it, the green tissue, so that it fits in. But it is quite fun actually. I used 1.5mm and then sanded down to shape. And just for fun, let's put it in here again, see what it looks like. Now of course it doesn't fit as well as it did, so I've got maybe to sand it down a little bit more. But that would be it. Let me zoom out a little bit. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to proceed with the rudder itself. So I'm going to do again this big, the S form I'm going to build, and then the ribs. And this one I probably will leave it for tissue. I'm not sure actually the Mustang it also had tissue surfaces. Some of the planes did have like aluminium, the main surfaces, and then the movable surfaces were covered in cloth. One thing I have to do then that I haven't done yet is then to bevel then this part, so when I put in the hinges then there's movement, it allows for movement. But anyhow, that will be then after that. So now for the rudder itself and some update on the build. So I've managed to do the rudder itself. I did it with a different way, like I just built basically in the air, in the hands, did the outer frame, stuck it to the main form, and then put in the ribs and then sanded them down. I also kind of planked the bottom part, because this is where I have the horn made of plywood, just because I do have some plastic ones, but why not use plywood if one has it lying around. I did have to put in some infills here, because for the planking, it actually, when I squeezed it with these pegs so that it glues in, it actually squeezed it in a little bit, so I had to put in a bit more planking in there and sanded it down. So it is a little bit visible, a little bit ugly. I'm hoping, and there's always the hope, that the tissue will cover it up, realizing that actually tissue doesn't cover anything up, it just makes it pop even more. So anyhow, that will be visible. What I've done also, I've taken some plastic and I've created my hinges, put two, one at the top, one at the bottom, and not completely at the bottom, because this part will then be stuck to the fuselage. So that's what I have here. And then what I've also tested, I don't know how to do this in an easier way. If I, let's see that pick it up. So if I put this in here, I still have to figure out how to do this, that it actually fits well. Then I can kind of squeeze this in here into the rear part of the fuselage, and let's see if I can see what I'm doing. Can't. Let's see if I don't break anything now live on camera. These two formers need to come up a little bit apart, a little bit clumsy, I know, but there. So let's see if we can see it, how I mount it, and a bit more further forward. Somehow it has to then finally sit like this. Don't know if you can see it. Let me move you a little bit. You can see a bit more of the mess. So there. So now with the whole tail assembly there, without the battery in the nose, it is actually sitting on its three wheels. If I take the tail assembly off, it tips over forward. It's true that then for the flight, I'll probably take the nose cone off, because we saw that that vibrates a little bit too much. So maybe the weight might turn out to be kind of okay. So this is somehow, it's already starting to look like a completed plane. But let me tip you down then again. The next step is actually, I'm going to take it off, is to tissue cover the fin and the rudder. And once that is done, then it will be about putting it onto the model itself, which is going to be its own little battle, and figuring out how to do the connection. There are some pieces for that, but I might actually just, a bit clumsily wing it, let's say like that. So anyhow, some progress, which is good. And at some point also need to connect then the rods for the elevator and the rudder, but that's probably going to come then with an assembly session. So next step, tissue covering of the fin and the rudder. I'll let you know when that is there, and that will probably be in the last update. And here's the completed fin and rudder. I haven't glued in the hinges yet, but there's some movement there. I've put them in but not glued them, because I might still need to move them around to make sure that I can connect in the control rod. I'm thinking might actually need to paint that horn, right? Or maybe not, I don't know. So then the next step is going to be to mount the whole thing onto the rear end of the fuselage. Maybe glue this together first, make sure that it's vertical, and then put it into the fuselage, cut the control rods, make sure everything moves as it has to, and that and then with that actually then the structure of the plane will be done. But and then we start with the final tissue covering, but that will be then the next chapter. So there it is, fin and rudder kind of finished and in place, with a couple of layers of matte lacquer, no, shiny lacquer, of lacquer, whatever. And that's it for this chapter. So thank you everybody as always for following along on this one, and I'll see you next time.